Hello and welcome back to the Property Legacy Podcast. My name is Alice Potter. I'm joined by my co-host Steve Potter, and we are here as always to teach you about property. And today's episode is we're in a new setting. We're currently set up in my conservatory, aren't we?
Yeah, it's very nice and sunny.
Change of scenery.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous sunny day, so we thought the best thing to probably talk about today is service accommodations, because this season is where people make a lot of money when it comes to service accommodations. But what we wanted to talk about is all of the positives of that, but also what happens seasonally when you have service accommodations and how can that be impacted, and how do you manage the seasonal changes when it comes to service accommodations. So let's just start by explaining what is the main desire why people want to get into service accommodation.
Okay, so the main reason for service accommodation is if you have a property that you rent out to an AST, like a buy-to-let property, it's going to be, on average, in certain areas of the country, about £100 a week income. But you could actually rent out the same property for £100 per night, and obviously then get a lot more money for the same property. And that's basically where service accommodation has come from. It's given an option so that families and commuters and people moving around for business can actually have a whole apartment or a whole house rather than just a hotel bedroom. And it's more homely, it's a bit more comfortable, you have more amenities, but effectively it's just a hotel room on steroids. You get a whole apartment or a whole house.
Okay, and there's been a huge rise over the last few years of popularity of service accommodations. There are big cities, you've got places like Manchester that are absolutely full of service accommodations now because they know it's a space where people want to go and stay. But we actually meet a lot of people who have service accommodations in big cities like Manchester that are empty, don't we?
We do. And even places like Dubai get lots of empty properties. What the scenario you get is everybody jumps on the same bandwagon. A lot of property developers build purpose-built properties for service accommodation, and obviously that just means there's a lot of competition. Obviously we're based in Blackpool. You'd think service accommodation would be booming. It does well, but the levels of rented out properties is about 40% occupation level, whereas ideally you want it in the 80s to 90s, because where there's too much competition, it's very difficult to get seen by everybody to get your property rented out unless it's unique, or unless you have a hot tub, or unless you have your a little hideaway up in the mountains with a log burner. Things like that is hard to make it stand out. But where you're looking at the competition, you can use DNA to have a look at all the competition in the area, and you need to decide whether there's too much competition or whether there is not much competition, so that you can then make a bonus out of that.
Okay, so what happens when the weather is not like this? What are the common struggles that people might have? How would we manage a property in the months where, it's dark and it's wet and we're in the UK? What is the best way to manage in those situations?
Yeah, so in those situations, not everybody wants to go abroad in January or February, especially January being the longest month ever after Christmas and no money being available. So besides the money point of things, you need to look at your property as who else could use it, not just holidaymakers. So you look at business people that are still going to travel to cities to do business. They would prefer a whole property rather than just a hotel room. You've got contractors working on building sites. You've got contractors working in power stations and substations around the country. So a company that has 5 guys that need to work in an area for 6 months could rent your property on on a slightly less than your service accommodation rate, but rent it for like 5-6 months. Because it's cheaper than putting 5 guys in one property than putting in 5 guys in 5 separate hotels.
Okay.
And that's basically what you could look at, is how to utilize that time in the off season point of view. There still will be holidaymakers want to go, but our service accommodation in the lakes, yes, we get people at weekends and February half term, and November to Christmas is okay at weekends, but during the weeks we tend not to have anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So you either make that the time that you're going to do any renovations or any decorating, any improvements, because you've got time to do it, or you look to rent these out to people on a short-term basis.
And a massive question is around cash flow as well. So if you have those peak months where you're doing well, and then you have a few months where you're hardly getting any bookings, what's the best way to manage your cash flow around that? Is it being strategic with how much cash you keep in?
It's very hard because your electric, your gas, all your bills still come in when you've got nobody in.
Yeah.
So it still costs you to have an empty property there. If you're paying council tax, you're going to pay that, no matter what time of the year it is. So it's all about leaving as much money alone in the bank account as you can and letting that ride out for the rest of the year. And at the end of the year, look to take money out of the business once you know you got through it. But that's all about your cash flow management. There will be times where it's getting £3,000 a month coming in, and then there'll be other times where you get £200, and you have to account for that. But the only way of doing that is by completely leaving the money alone, which is easier said than done, because we all would like to have some income coming out of the properties. At the end of the year, you want to make sure you make a profit, but you obviously don't want to be stuck and having to pay for the bills out of your own pocket, which does happen.
So even though all of this happens, there's still such an appeal to get into service accommodation.
There is.
So what would you say is the best advice for somebody that's looking to get into service accommodation? What would you say is the most ideal advice from somebody that's done that strategy? We've got our service accommodation book, that with case studies from our experiences. But what would be your best advice, besides obviously purchasing the book? What would be your best advice to them?
Well, effectively, in any property, you need to buy the property as cheaply as possible, because if it's an expensive area, an expensive house, it's going to take a lot just to cover the mortgage. You're going to have to make sure you get enough income for that. So if you buy a property that's generally fairly cheap, at the lower end of the range, and you can renovate it to look really nice, that's the ideal thing because you make most of your money actually at the purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're looking at the areas, you look for an area that doesn't have much competition, but has fairly high demand, and that you set your property up to suit the local market. So there's no point in setting up hot tubs and outdoor partying areas and things like that in an area where people are just going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to have NHS workers with you, or you're going to have those types of people. There's not business people. Yeah, they might go to the bar in a hotel at night, but they don't tend to go partying.
No.
Because they've got work to do. You need to look at who your target market is and decorate and set up your property for that. If it is tourism, then great, you set up for tourism, but there will be times of the year that people don't come as often. Mm-hmm. Set up your minimum price you want per night, making sure it covers all your bills, so that even if somebody comes in and just does the weekends at that minimum, covers all your bills.
Yeah.
And then you anything extra is bonus. That way you know that in winter your bills are covered, And if there is a shortfall, there won't be much. Now, when you're working with Airbnb and Booking.com and things like that, be careful because they always offer you different ways to be seen by potential customers, usually by giving an offer like a 10% deduction if you use a mobile phone or a last minute deduction. But sometimes these mount up, so you might think you're getting £100 a night, but they're giving 10% off because they booked on a mobile phone, and then they're giving another percentage off because it's 2 days before the weekend and they're booking that weekend, and actually you're only getting £70. But the cleaning fee might be 75.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful in these special offers that these companies use to generate interest for clients, but you might end up not having any profit.
Right, okay. So it's a bit of a, it can be a slippery slope if you don't know.
Well, yeah, if it stacks these things to get your property rented out, which is great, but if they're renting it out and for some reason you set it so they rent out for one night, the cleaning fee is still the same whether it's one night or a week, and you could end up with nothing towards the bills and anything. So you just have to make sure you don't fall into this trap of having a few different offers that can stack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're doing an offer, then have it so it doesn't get affected by any other offers. And then that's how you kind of set it up. And you run it and put your prices up until people stop coming. Because you don't know what the local market will do. You can use software like Price Labs and things like that to help you. But quite often those kind of systems will set you at 50% of the market. But actually you could have gone for 75% of the market. Mm-hmm. You might not get as many customers, but they're paying more.
Yeah.
So I think Alex Hormozy always talks about keeping prices up until people stop buying it and then just edging back. Because that's what your market value is. Yeah. And obviously during the summer, the prices are higher. At Christmas week, it's a lot higher. Make sure you put them in.
School holidays.
But yes, make sure you put them in because Easter moves. It moves every year, so it's difficult to keep on top of that when that is, and make sure you keep altering those dates.
Yeah, fantastic.
So that's it for today. If you want more information about holiday lets and service accommodation, then you can buy our book. The books are $10.99 on Amazon, or you can get the Kindle version for £3.50. Very cheap. In there we've got case studies, all the theory behind service accommodation. And if you've got any questions, come and see me on a Monday evening at 7 p.m. through our Facebook and Zoom meeting, and then you can ask any questions you want. It's totally free, and you're more than welcome to come along.
So to connect with us, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on LinkedIn, and you can tune us to the podcast every fortnight. We have a brand new episode. We're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to have a look at our website too. We've got all of our previous episodes and guests, and any information about how you can work with us and work with Steve to do coaching. And we will see you for our next episode in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.